Hi guys, my name's Bex and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing to you a beginner's guide to fantasy. In a new series which is going to be bringing to you a beginner's guide to different genres and different themes, such as today's, which is fantasy. So I'm not going to tell you what's upcoming because I want that to be a surprise, but I wanted to start out with my favorite genre and giving you 5 beginner's books to get you into this genre. And I didn't want to be typical and give you the Harry Potter or the Mortal Instruments. I wanted to do something a little bit different and give you ones that you probably have heard of, but I think are a perfect way to start a fantasy journey in your older years rather than when you were younger reading Harry Potter and getting involved in those sort of worlds. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So, the first book on my beginner's guide to fantasy is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a series which is The Raven Cycle. This is a 4-book series and it's absolutely incredible. It's an adventure story about friendship. It has beautiful lyrical writing. It has amazing dynamic characters, and it's a good way to start reaching into the fantasy genre because it's sort of borderline fantasy, magical realism. It kind of blends together a little bit, and I really love this series. It follows a girl named Blue who has always been told when she kisses the love of her life, he will die. Her family is clairvoyants and they are very spiritual. She meets up with this group of boys from Aglionby, which is the prestigious school in their community, which Blue has always hated, Aglionby boys. And their adventure starts there. I highly recommend this one, especially starting out if you're not used to the fantasy genre. The writing's lyrical and it's enough in our world. It's breaching on the fantasy genre and the magical, which I love. The second book on my beginner's guide to fantasy is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. Now, this is the first book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, and it is the first book in the Grishaverse, which spans through this series and through the Six of Crows duology. And this is a book I definitely wish I read earlier when I was just breaching into fantasy. It's a really good foundational fantasy story. It's got all the things you could want in a fantasy. It's got magic, it's got monsters, and I really enjoyed this story. So, Shadow and Bone follows Alina Starkov, who is an orphan, a soldier, and perhaps something a little bit more. So Alina and her best friend Mal are in the army and they must cross the Shadowfold, which is a pit of absolute darkness with monsters. But when her regiment is attacked, Alina unleashes a dormant magic that she did not know she had to save her friend Mal. From there, she is taken from her regiment and taken to join the Grisha, which are magical beings. They can be healers, heartrenders, tide makers, fabricators, and inferni. There are different types of these groups, and she is forced into their world to learn what she is. So she enters the world of royalty and trains with the Grisha, falls under the spell of their notorious leader, the Darkling. He believes she can raise a force to get rid of the Shadowfold forever, and the adventure kind of goes on from there. I really enjoyed Shadow and Bone. I really liked the characters, and I really liked the series as a whole. I think this one's definitely like a good book to start into the fantasy genre. It has all that you could want in a fantasy, and I really enjoyed it. The third book on my beginner's guide to fantasy is Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton, and this is a really good one. And this is one of the books that I first picked up when I was breaching back into fantasy. It has such an awesome premise, set sort of in the desert, and follows a girl named Amani who is a sharpshooter. Amani lives in a dead-end town called Dustwalk and is not the place to be if you are poor, orphaned, or female. This is a place where you end up wed or dead, and Amani doesn't want to be either of those things. Then a foreigner turns up out of nowhere, and with him a chance to run. But the desert is full of dangerous magic, and Amani finds herself on the run and in the middle of a rebellion as the Sultan's army is rising, and it's really good. The main character, Amani, is amazing. She is badass and she does not care what she has to do to survive. But this book is a lot more than I thought it would be. The story over the 3 books in this trilogy just keep getting better and better. It turns into something amazing. I definitely think this is a different take. It's an Arabian feel fantasy and I really enjoyed it. Characters are amazing, the story is amazing, and I love to see where the characters go from here onwards in the series. The fourth book in my beginner's guide to fantasy is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. And before you pick this one up, I want to tell you straight away that the world building in this is absolutely incredible. You could not get a better built world, and I absolutely loved reading the first two books in the series. I have not finished the series yet. I am still to read A Conjuring of Light, but this has made the list without me even finishing the trilogy. A Darker Shade of Magic follows Kell, who is a Antari. So he is like a traveller who can go in different Londons, and in this world there are 4 Londons. Black London, Grey London, White London, and Red London. And Kell is from Red London, and basically he takes messages between the kings of the different Londons to the other Londons and kind of keeps the communication between the different worlds, and different worlds have different kinds of magic. So Red London is vibrant and is full of magic and it's beautiful. There is White London where people struggle to contain the remaining magic. Grey London, which doesn't have magic at all, and then once there was Black London. And it basically follows Kell as he is caught bringing something he shouldn't do into the different Londons, and it has a flow-on effect. Kell then meets a girl named Lila, who is a self-professed pirate. She's interesting. The world in this is beautiful. The writing in this is absolutely phenomenal, and the adventure story is fantastic. The characters are well built and just really, really good. It's really good. And I think it's a really good starting novel to get into the different types of world building, because the world building in this is very advanced and fantastic. And I think it really, really draws you into the fantasy world. And the last book on my beginner's guide to fantasy is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. Of course, I couldn't go through this beginner's guide without mentioning the amazing Court of Thorns and Roses series, which I absolutely adore. A Court of Thorns and Roses is a Beauty and the Beast retelling following a girl named Feyre. Her family is starving and she's fighting to survive for them. She is the youngest of 3 girls and she goes out to find food for them. She comes across an animal that is basically a sentry to the Fae, and she kills it for food. The next thing she knows, a monster comes to her door and takes her away to the Fae land. He is the High Lord of the Spring Court, and in retribution for the life she took, she must serve out her life in the Fae lands in his court. That is all I'll give you on this one, but if you haven't heard of this trilogy, I'm not sure where you've been hiding, because it is all over BookTube, and for good reason. It's a wonderful take on Fae. I really love the world in which Court of Thorns and Roses series takes place. I love the characters. Our main character, Feyre, her development throughout the series is fantastic. And I think it's a book you can really sink your teeth into, because throughout the series your mood changes on this series. And when I first read this one, I absolutely adored it. And it was kind of, you didn't really need to go any further, but I continued on and the series just got better from A Court of Mist and Fury. I highly, highly recommend this one if you want a sort of Fae story, but I really like the way Sarah J Maas writes Fae. I like how she writes them so beautifully, and that she makes you feel so attached to these characters. And that's it for me today, guys. That is my beginner's guide to fantasy and 5 books I highly, highly recommend to get you into the fantasy genre. They are some of my favorite books, and I hope you like them if you decide to read them. As a huge lover of fantasy, these are books that I really, really enjoyed starting with, or wish I started with, and I definitely think they will set you off on a really good fantasy reading experience. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more and have not already, and chat to me down in the comments. Let me know what your favorite fantasy read is, and that's it for me today, guys. I make videos every Monday and Thursday, and I'll see you in a new one. Bye!